Man, one of the wildest things about this current Baltimore Ravens squad is not even their talent on paper. It's the fact that they're so self-aware. They know exactly what the issues are. They recognize the patterns that keep hurting them. And yet those same patterns continue to pop up when it matters most. Take what Odafe Oweh said after the loss to the Buffalo Bills. He admitted straight up that the Ravens took their foot off the gas. He said they jumped out early because they wanted to dominate. They built a big lead and then got complacent. They thought the game was already in the bag. And that mindset right there explains so much of why this team looks like a juggernaut for 3 quarters, but finds ways to fall apart late. That is not just a one-off problem. It's something that's been living in the DNA of this franchise for years. Marlon Humphrey doubled down on that when he broke down what went wrong. He said the defense had literally practiced those exact game situations in camp. The right play calls were there, the alignments were correct, and yet the execution completely fell apart. Humphrey said all 11 guys just weren't on the same page, and when that happens against a team like Buffalo, you get exposed. That kind of self-awareness is almost chilling because it shows the Ravens aren't blind to their mistakes. They see them clearly, but for some reason, they can't consistently fix them when the lights are brightest. And that's what makes it even crazier when you look across this defense. You've got established names at every level. You glance at the corners and see guys like Jaire Alexander or Chidobe Awuzie. You check the rookie presence with Nate Wiggins. You've got Kyle Hamilton patrolling the back end. Up front, there's Justin Matabike, Kyle Van Noy, Travis Jones, and of course Roquan Smith holding everything together in the middle. There's experience everywhere. Yes, there are a few fresh faces like Malachi Starks and Teddy Buchanan, but overall this group is packed with veterans who have seen it all. And yet, despite that experience, the same problems keep haunting them. Humphrey even said it himself. They knew what the Bills were going to run. They knew it, but they still couldn't stop it. Now, Humphrey didn't just stop at admitting the issue. He also made it clear that accountability is supposed to be a new standard under defensive coordinator Zach Orr. According to him, if you're not doing things the right way, you're not going to be on the field. No more protecting guys. No more covering up mistakes. Play the right way or watch from the sideline. That's a bold stance, but it also highlights the uncomfortable truth. This exact same conversation was happening last season too. Humphrey said the same things last year about players who weren't locked in, about benchings being necessary, and about the defense needing to raise its standard. So if it was an issue then, and it's still an issue now, you have to wonder what it's really going to take for this team to break free from that mentality. And it goes back even further than just last year. You can dig up quotes from Lamar Jackson back in 2020 after a heartbreaking overtime loss to the Titans. He literally said the Ravens took their foot off the gas once they had a lead. That was 4 years ago, so we're not talking about a new bad habit. We're talking about a cultural flaw that's lingered for season after season. Even in the Super Bowl against the 49ers, people joked that Baltimore was lucky they were facing another Harbaugh, because if not, their tendency to let teams come back might have cost them a trophy. That shows just how deeply rooted this issue is. Fast forward to today, and the lack of respect is becoming obvious. Earlier this offseason, Humphrey admitted that teams don't fear the Ravens' defense the way they used to. And Jerry Jeudy just proved that point when he was asked about the challenges Baltimore's secondary would present this weekend. His response? No challenges. He didn't hesitate, didn't stutter, just flat out said the defense brings no problems for him and the Browns. That's the level of disrespect this unit is dealing with right now. And it's because of performances like last week where they gave up 41 points. That's why this matchup with Cleveland feels so critical. Baltimore doesn't just need a win, they need a statement. A bounce back that demands respect across the league. Minimum of 5 sacks, minimum of 2 interceptions, something that forces everyone to take notice again. And waiting on the other sideline is a familiar face. Joe Flacco, the former Super Bowl MVP, is now suiting up for Cleveland. Ravens fans will always have love for Flacco. He brought the city a championship and gave them years of memories. He spoke about Baltimore with nothing but appreciation this week, talking about how the organization took a chance on him back in 2008 and how much he still respects the fans and the city. But all that sentimentality goes out the window once the game kicks off. On Sunday, Flacco's the enemy. Baltimore can show love after the final whistle, but in between, it has to be ruthless. The Ravens' defense needs to treat this game like a personal statement, and Flacco just happens to be the target in front of them. The big question hanging over all of this, though, is leadership. Fans are starting to openly wonder how many more collapses it would take for John Harbaugh's seat to actually get hot. He's been in Baltimore for a long time and has built a respected culture, but even owner Steve Bisciotti has admitted he's tired of waiting for another Super Bowl. And while Harbaugh probably isn't going anywhere mid-season, the pressure is mounting. If the Ravens keep repeating the same mistakes, how much longer can they justify keeping things the same? Even with talented coordinators and stacked personnel, if the mentality doesn't change, the results won't either. All right, so here's where things get really tricky for the Ravens. Because it's not just about one bad defensive performance or one ugly collapse. The conversation is shifting into something deeper about the long-term direction of this team and whether the people in charge are capable of fixing the cycle. A lot of fans are pointing fingers at defensive coordinator Zach, or saying the issues we're seeing are the same ones that showed up last season. Some will argue that the second half of last year's campaign looked much better, but when you break it down, the quality of opponents was nowhere near the same level as Buffalo. It's easy to look like a top secondary when you're not facing elite quarterbacks every week. Now that the schedule is ramping back up with legitimate contenders, the cracks are being exposed again, and that's where the frustration builds. People feel like they were sold false hope, thinking this group had turned the corner when really they hadn't faced a real test. And that right there is why so much heat is landing on Orr. You can't keep recycling the same mistakes and expect fans to believe things are changing. Humphrey already warned that accountability has to be real, but the bigger issue is that accountability has to start with the coordinator himself. This defense isn't playing with the same creativity, the same versatility, the same attacking style it had under Mike Macdonald. Instead of dictating to offenses, they're sitting back, reacting, and often playing soft. That doesn't fly in today's NFL, especially when you've invested so heavily in your secondary. If you've got names like Hamilton, Smith, and Humphrey, there's no reason you should be looking that vulnerable week after week. And that's why some fans are already saying, forget about Harbaugh for a second. The real seat that should be burning is Orr's. Of course, Harbaugh isn't off the hook either. He's built his reputation as a great leader, a motivator, a culture guy, but when you're consistently losing games in the same exact fashion year after year, situational coaching comes into question. Against the Bills, the Ravens' defense had already given up 38 points by the time Harbaugh trusted them to get a stop. Think about that. Your unit's been shredded all game long, and instead of adjusting, instead of being aggressive, you put the ball back in Josh Allen's hands. That's not a strategy, that's blind faith. And when blind faith keeps backfiring, people start wondering if the head coach has lost his edge in those critical moments. The thing is, this isn't just a one-game meltdown. Fans have seen this movie before. They've seen Lamar and the offense explode for 40 points only for the defense to hand it right back. They've seen highlight plays from guys like Zay Flowers, Derrick Henry, and DeAndre Hopkins get completely overshadowed because the defense can't close the door. When that happens enough times, people stop talking about talent and start talking about culture. They start asking if the organization has become too comfortable with almost winning, almost being elite, almost being feared. And that's where the pressure on Harbaugh gets real. Because if the Ravens come up short again this year, it won't just be because of injuries or bad luck. It will be because the same flaws keep getting ignored. Now let's talk about the offensive side for a second, because while Lamar Jackson and company did their part, there's another story brewing with the running backs. Fans were shocked to see Keaton Mitchell listed as a healthy scratch, while Ollie got the nod instead. Harbaugh explained it as a special teams decision, saying Mitchell needs to improve in that phase, but a lot of people aren't buying that excuse. Mitchell is one of the most explosive players on this roster. Even if defenses can predict a run when he's on the field, there are still countless ways to use him as a decoy, in play action, in screens, or even as a motion threat. Taking him off the active list feels like the staff is overthinking, or maybe even underestimating how much he can impact the game. If you're trying to put the best talent on the field, Mitchell has to be in that rotation, and fans aren't going to stop pushing for that. But that's the kind of decision-making that has people scratching their heads. On one hand, the Ravens talk about accountability and making sure the right players are out there. On the other hand, you've got younger, more dynamic pieces being held back, while veterans who haven't been producing continue to see the field. It sends mixed messages to the locker room and to the fan base. If the message is do things the right way and you'll play, then it has to apply to everybody. Otherwise, it looks like favoritism, and once you lose trust in that consistency, the culture starts slipping even more. Back to the defense for a moment. A lot of fans are calling for a more aggressive approach in the pass rush. For years now, the Ravens haven't had a dominant edge presence since Terrell Suggs. They've pieced it together with solid contributors, but not that one guy who forces offensive coordinators to panic. Without that, quarterbacks like Josh Allen are just too comfortable. Fans want to see more blitzes, more disguises, more creativity, something that resembles what Baltimore used to do when they struck fear into every opponent. Because right now, it's looking way too predictable, way too passive. You can't expect to get away with a four-man rush that doesn't get home, not against the caliber of quarterbacks this team is going to see. One play in particular sticks out from that Bills game and keeps replaying in the minds of Ravens fans. Right before halftime, Buffalo picked up a huge completion with only a handful of seconds left, setting up a field goal. Baltimore dropped 11 men back in coverage, rushed nobody, and still got burned. Plays like that don't just hurt on the scoreboard, they crush the morale of a defense. How are you supposed to be aggressive? How are you supposed to play with swagger when your own scheme tells you to stand around and watch? That's the kind of passive mentality that has defined too many Ravens losses. And until that changes, the result is going to look the same. And the frustration is reaching the fan base in a major way. Some supporters are even talking about tuning out altogether, saying they're tired of watching the same heartbreak every year. That shows you how deep this issue runs. It's not about one loss to the Bills. It's about years of being on the cusp and never crossing the finish line. It's about knowing the team has the pieces, knowing they're good enough to beat anyone, but also knowing in the back of your mind that when the fourth quarter comes, the collapse is always lurking. That's not the reputation Baltimore wants, but it's the one they've earned until they prove otherwise. Even the linebacker rotation has fans talking. Rookie Teddy Buchanan seems to already be taking snaps away from Trenton Simpson, showing up more often alongside Roquan Smith. That's a big shift, because it proves coaches are willing to slide someone new in if they feel like the production is there. Buchanan has been solid against the run and looks more comfortable than expected for a rookie, while Simpson is quietly losing ground. Those little adjustments matter, and they also prove that the Ravens do have options if they really want to shake things up. The question is, do they have the courage to keep making those changes across the board? Before we dive in, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Your support keeps us bringing you the latest news on the Baltimore Ravens. And hey, drop your take in the comments below. We want to hear from the flock. In a move that has sent shockwaves through the NFL world, Michael Pierce, the defensive powerhouse long thought to have hung up his cleats, is reportedly returning to the gridiron, and this time with the Baltimore Ravens. Sources close to the situation describe the development as unbelievable and completely unexpected, and the rumor alone has ignited a frenzy among fans and analysts alike. Pierce, whose presence on the defensive line was a game-changer during his prime, had officially announced his retirement last year, citing both the toll of the sport and a desire to focus on life beyond football. Yet, whispers began circulating late last week about possible negotiations with several teams seeking to bolster their defensive front. The Ravens, it seems, jumped at the opportunity, reportedly presenting a deal that Pierce couldn't resist. While official confirmation has yet to be released, insiders suggest that the star defensive tackle has already put pen to paper, signaling an astonishing return to one of the league's most feared defensive units. For Baltimore, the potential addition of Pierce could be transformative. The Ravens' defense has long been recognized as one of the league's elite, and the prospect of adding a player of Pierce's caliber, someone who can dominate the line of scrimmage, collapse pockets, and disrupt opposing offenses, is enough to send opponents scrambling for answers. Coaches and teammates, speaking on condition of anonymity, are reportedly thrilled at the prospect of seeing Pierce in purple once again. The locker room atmosphere is said to be electric, with veteran players reportedly teasing younger teammates about the Pierce effect already. Of course, questions remain. Can Pierce, after a brief retirement, return to peak form? Will the physical demands of the NFL prove too great after time away? Analysts are divided, with some claiming this could be the most sensational mid-career comeback in recent memory, while others caution that the risk of injury and rust is significant. Still, the buzz on social media is undeniable. Fans are flooding forums, speculating on how Pierce's presence might alter game plans, rotation strategies, and the Ravens' chances of a deep playoff run. If this rumor proves true, the NFL will be witnessing one of the most remarkable comebacks in recent years, and Baltimore could suddenly find itself with a secret weapon on the defensive line. For now, all eyes remain on Michael Pierce and the Ravens, as fans await the official announcement that could turn the league upside down. One thing is certain, the chatter isn't slowing down anytime soon. That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to stay in the loop with exclusive news on our Baltimore Ravens, make sure to subscribe and hit that like button. We'd love to hear what the flock thinks. Drop your thoughts in the comments. See you in the next one.